Hi, everyone. We're just waiting on a few more folks to join us, so hang tight. All right, why don't we go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to ARCCA's second learning session of the year titled The Ins and Outs of the LA Energy Atlas. Today, we will be diving into the LA Energy Atlas, which is an interactive tool that visually displays energy consumption data across LA County, and it's jam-packed with different ways you can view and filter the data. My name is Julia Kim with the Local Government Commission, and I will be the moderator for this webinar. And before we get started, I wanted to go over a few logistics. Everyone will be muted except for our panelists, and due to the large number of participants, we ask that you type your questions into the question box of the control panel. We will be summarizing those questions during the Q&A portions following the presentations. Any of the questions we don't get to, we'll ask the presenters to respond to after the webinar, and we will make the responses available on our website. The webinar will also be recorded and made available on our website along with the PowerPoint presentations. I'm excited to have three great panelists join us today. We have Krista Klein, who will be providing some welcoming remarks on behalf of the Alliance of Regional Collaboratives for Climate Adaptation and LARC. And then we will have Zoe Elizabeth providing the feature presentation on the LA Energy Atlas, and special guest, Ron Moore, who will provide a local perspective around the benefits of the tool and how it can be best utilized. So let's go ahead and get started. First, we'll have Krista presenting. There we go. Krista Klein is the Managing Director of the Los Angeles Regional Collaborative for Climate Action and Sustainability. She's also the current chair of ARCCA. The LARC, which is housed at UCLA's Institute of the Environment, brings together leadership from government, the business community, academia, labor, and environmental and community groups to encourage greater regional coordination on climate change mitigation and adaptation throughout LA County. Previously, Krista handled land use, green building, and LA River issues for the mayor of Los Angeles.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? Julie, is the screen showing? I'm not sure I did. It is. Okay, great. So as Julia said, I'm Krista Klein. I'm the Managing Director of the Los Angeles Regional Collaborative for Climate Action and Sustainability. We know that's quite a mouthful for a name of an entity, so please call us LARC. And thank you so much for joining us today for this ARCCA learning session. I think this is our third one. So we're trying to make this a more regular event, so Julia will talk a little bit more about our upcoming learning sessions after we conclude this one. A little bit about ARCCA. As you can see, there are currently 5 regional collaboratives throughout the state. You see the little state entity there. We've come together as a network to accelerate our regional climate action efforts. We realized that each of us in our respective regions were doing some similar work, not the same work, but very similar work, and we wanted to come together and share best practices, sources of funding, and just be able to have staff talk to one another about successes that we're seeing in our regions And also collectively, we've realized that we give a much more effective voice to local concerns and needs to our state leaders because we've come together. And it's a symbiotic relationship. State agency staff has been able to tap into our local networks and receive recommendations on guidance they're developing. So it definitely is a two-way street with the regions and the state government. So it's a great organization that we're all a part of, and happy to share some of our best efforts with you. LARC itself, if I can't figure out how to advance the slides. Sorry. But LARC itself is a membership organization. Our network, we're a network as well, is a cross-section of climate practitioners and decision makers. We have academics, cities, LA County, regional agencies, nonprofits, and businesses. So all these different types of entities that work on climate change efforts. Our mission is to ensure a sustainable LA and prepare ourselves for the impacts of climate change. We also recognize that we need cross-jurisdictional collaboration on this issue. Climate change is an issue that its impacts affect us very locally, and they're all different sorts of entities working on trying to address these head on. And so LARC brings all of us together to talk about that, and we coordinate resiliency efforts with land use, transportation, infrastructure, energy, water, public health, emergency response, and resource management partners. So we not only coordinate different types of entities working on these issues, but across issue areas all around climate. We have a series of established meetings and events to encourage peer-to-peer discussions and sharing of work that folks are doing. And we also like to, our ultimate goal is to bridge the research and data taking place in the LA region on climate, both mitigation and adaptation resilience, with policy development and implementation of those policies. So I'm going to now turn it over to Zoe, and she can get us started with the Energy Atlas learning session.
Great, thank you so much, Krista. Next, we have Zoe Elizabeth. Zoe is Associate Director of the California Center for Sustainable Communities at UCLA. She serves as a project manager of the LA Energy Atlas and works on special projects for LARC, including the energy section of LARC's Regional Climate Action Framework. Zoe has a master's degree in urban planning for UCLA, with an emphasis in regional planning, as well as a certificate in leadership and sustainability, also from UCLA. She has worked for local governments, regional agencies, and nonprofits in the area of climate change and sustainability. Prior to working at CCSC, Zoe was a senior policy analyst at the Climate Registry, where she developed protocols for local government greenhouse gas accounting. She also worked for LA County Metro, helping them to develop their first environmental reporting initiative. So thank you, Zoe.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much for joining us this afternoon. I'm just delighted to be able to share information about a project that I'm incredibly passionate about, the LA Energy Atlas. And for those of you who have not yet had a chance to view the Atlas, it is an interactive web-based tool designed specifically for local governments as well as other decision makers to assist and support energy and climate action planning. So I think we all know that California has long been a leader in energy and environmental policy, and we continue as a state to move forward and create bolder and more broad-ranging policies. And I think that with the recent passing of legislation such as SB 350 and 802, there is an important theme that has been emerging over the last several years in state policy and around the discussion of energy program implementation more generally, and that is data. This is very much the era of data. Due to breakthroughs in technology, we now have the capacity to store, manage, and analyze massive amounts of data in a time-efficient and cost-efficient manner. And that's really the place within which the Energy Atlas sits, in this discussion about the importance of data, about the cutting edge technology, and making that data accessible to those who need it. Researchers at UCLA were able to obtain address level energy consumption from 2006 to 2010 for nearly all of LA County. So that's about 25% of the state, both in terms of population and energy consumption. Instead of hoarding that data and using it to build our own name recognition only, we decided to actually transform that data into a publicly accessible tool. We transformed over 500 million records into an easy-to-use, elegant, I'll even say beautiful website, so that the entire region and really the entire state could benefit from this data. We worked for over 2 years with a stakeholder, through a stakeholder-driven process to create the tool, which we really see as a community resource. So I'm presenting today on behalf of the entire team at CCSD, on behalf of our director, Dr. Stephanie Pincel, and also on behalf of all of the stakeholders that were part of this process. Specifically, the key partners were the County of Los Angeles. You'll hear from Ron Moore at the end of this presentation. And also Howard Choi really saw the importance of disaggregated energy data and why it was absolutely necessary for Los Angeles to meet our goals effectively and efficiently. Other researchers from the UCLA Institute of Environment and Sustainability have been key in reviewing our methods and documents. Of course, LARC members, who I share half of my time with at LARC, but LARC members are both users of the Atlas, have provided input into the Atlas, and also help us to spread the word about the Atlas so that folks will use it. And finally, the Southern California Regional Energy Network provides information, helps us to communicate the Atlas, and also provides us expertise about what users need the most. So I always need to say that I'm going to go through a few slides showing the Atlas itself, but please do not let the simplicity and the beauty of the site fool you. This is really a powerful and sophisticated tool that's built on a huge and complex data set. And as anyone who is part of ARCCA knows, any collaborative process is also filled with complexities and intricacies. And so all of that went into making this tool as usable as it is. So as I stated from the beginning, that we're really in this new era of data. And some of you may be familiar with the discussion that has been ongoing across the state for several years regarding the need for greater disaggregated energy data. Energy is not consumed evenly across space or buildings or by people. And as policy mandates become more and more stringent, it's essential that we become smarter and more targeted about how we create policies and how we implement programs. So the Energy Atlas was designed to inform planning efforts, to provide more detailed, yet still easily accessible information about how energy is used by different building types, buildings built at different years, and how that varies from neighborhood to neighborhood. Local governments are those often that shoulder the burden of implementing these programs, but with constrained resources, the ability to analyze a lot of data is quite difficult. It's very resource intensive, as well as getting access to that data. And so again, this was a collaborative process where UCLA used our analytical powers and technological powers to provide a tool for regional decision makers. And the first version of the Energy Atlas is based in Los Angeles. I always think it's important to give an introduction to this complex region. As I mentioned, we are 25% of the state's population and energy consumption. 50% of the state's disadvantaged population, as defined by Cal EnviroScreen, I know it's not a perfect tool, but by Cal EnviroScreen, live within Los Angeles County borders. When we were starting out this project, I kept asking, can we just focus on the city of Los Angeles? The city of Los Angeles itself is within its borders, you could fit Boston, Manhattan, Chicago, Pittsburgh, and 3 other major metropolitan regions. Within the county of Los Angeles, we are the size in terms of geography and population of the entire country of Sweden. We have deserts, we have areas that are as dense as Manhattan, we have islands, and we have forests, as well as a rich and diverse demographics. So I say that again to give you a sense of how much information is in this tool, as well as there's many different utilities that operate within our borders. So again, it looks simple and elegant, but there's a tremendous amount of diversity here. So a very quick overview to give you a flavor for what this contains. Behind the website is a powerful geospatial relational database. Again, I think I said before, there's over 500 million records of address level consumption, which we connect in the background to parcel level building characteristics, such as type of building, commercial, residential, multifamily, industrial, institutional, size of building, year built, sociodemographic characteristics. In the background database, we also have things like solar potential, if there is an industrial classification code associated with that particular parcel, weather characteristics. In the future, we're going to be connecting future climate predictions to that area. Data is then aggregated to protect customer privacy. So under the California Public Utilities Code, individual energy data is considered private data, and we take that privacy incredibly seriously. So this large geospatial database is located at UCLA, only accessible at UCLA to a select group of researchers. I always say I'm actually not even allowed to touch get access to the behind the scenes data. It's really just for those who absolutely need it. So we then aggregate that data on that server and take the aggregated data, bring it to another server, which then powers the actual website that you see online. And that does 2 things. One, it makes sure that the private data there's not even a firewall there. It's absolutely separate from the public data. It also means that everything that you see on the public data that is downloadable, completely accessible in CSV or Excel, so you can pull it onto your computer and run further calculations, manipulate it, connect it with other meaningful data sets. At the beginning of the year, actually, we plan to also release the underlying API, so you'll have the full data tables at your disposal to play with and inform decision making. I also just like to state that this underlying database, although it is not publicly available, is a tremendously important research. It has research platform that because the data is down to the geographically specific level, any piece of information that has a geographic component can be connected to the data. It provides a really fabulous, dynamic, flexible, and responsive form to answer research questions and policy information questions. Again, it is not publicly available, but we do invite others to connect with UCLA, to develop partnerships with UCLA so that we can leverage this investment that was made by the state and the county to really inform new knowledge and decision making going forward. On the website, you can see data for the entire county for our 6 councils of governments, over 90 cities, and over 200 neighborhoods. As I said, all data is absolutely downloadable. There is an interactive map where you can see total consumption as well as consumption normalized by various statistics such as square foot and per capita. There's detailed printable fact sheets for every geography. There is a data table that allows users to compare across geographies and across different variables. There are data stories that describe the statistically derived patterns across the county. And there also is a strategy section that provides an overview of energy policies and programs. That strategy section was put together by ARCCA and is really an important and critical component to putting all this information in perspective. And again, all of this information here was developed through a stakeholder process. Users told us what information they wanted to see and how they wanted to see it. With that, I'm going to move to just a quick couple of screenshots of the website so that you can see what is there, and hopefully it will entice you to go and play around with the site after this. Here on the screen is a version of the map itself, one of the first pieces of the atlas. You're seeing all building types and electricity consumption total by neighborhoods. If you clicked on any one of these neighborhoods, then a little thumbprint like the one below you showing a high-level snapshot of building type energy consumption through the years, as well as energy intensity and the socio-demographics such as population and income would open up right below. Literally with a click of your button, you have a tremendous wealth of information. Users can compare up to 5 geographies at a time right on that screen. And then and I should just highlight too that above you can see that there's several different ways that the data can be seen on the map. I'm not going to go through all of them today, but you can see electricity consumption, natural gas consumption, greenhouse gas emissions, depending on what your needs are or your interests are. The next thing that users told us again and again that they wanted was detailed information for the jurisdictions in which they work. And so from that map, you can click more information on any one of the geographies, or you can go to the profile directory and select from any one of the geographies and get this 2-page printable information. And one of the things, again, stakeholders said is that they wanted something that provided very detailed information about the places where they were working that was also really easy to understand, very visually appealing, that they could print out and bring to decision makers. So this is, you're seeing just the top portion of the handout, but you can print it out into a double-sided form. It also does come in black and white, and bring that to whoever it is that you need to share information about your jurisdiction. And on there's the overview consumption trend information. There's information about energy intensity and total consumption by building type, by year built, by building size. That was really one of the things that kept coming back, is that folks who were making energy disclosure ordinances wanted information about how much energy buildings of different sizes use, as well as information about income brackets and residential consumption. The next interactive feature is the data table, which allows regions to, right now we have all of the COGS pulled up as an example. And you can see here that you can compare geographies to each other as well as different variables to each other. And this, I have a lot of fun playing around with this still. I'm always learning new things. So you can see how different geographies compare differently with different metrics. So, for example, we see that Malibu, not on this slide, but we've seen that Malibu per capita consumption is, they are number 1, the most energy intensive per capita residential consumption. But right smack dab in the middle, I believe that it's they're 50th for residential energy consumption per square foot. So this again adds, you're able to add new layers and depth to how we understand how energy is consumed. Understanding that if we look at things in one way, that does not tell the entire story. And this you can sort and add different geographies as needed. Some very high level, a couple of pieces of information that we or other users have found is that on average, poorer areas use more energy per square foot, but less energy per person. It's almost entirely true that I believe in every single case of the highest energy use per capita in Los Angeles County are wealthy coastal areas. And again, on average, the poorer regions seem to use more energy per square foot. However, this does fluctuate somewhat. So as we're attempting to make decisions about how to best use Prop 39 and target other investments into traditionally underserved neighborhoods, actually understanding the characteristics of the specific neighborhood we realize is very, very important. And that I mentioned about Malibu, they use actually about 10 times more energy on a per capita basis than Hawaiian Gardens. Hawaiian Gardens does use more energy on a per square foot basis than Malibu. Across Los Angeles County, smaller buildings use a considerable amount of energy. We're a flat city, and there's a lot of attention towards large buildings, but in Los Angeles, we see that a lot of attention also needs to be paid to smaller buildings. And then in general, newer homes in 2010 used less energy per square foot than older homes. And conversely, newer commercial buildings used more energy per square foot than older ones. And so digging a little bit deeper, one of the things, as I mentioned, you see this question, so other folks are probably familiar with this, that poorer areas seem to be less energy efficient per square foot. We begin to ask, well, what could be some of the reasons for that? And through pulling out data in the Energy Atlas, this graph was created by one of our research scientists, Eric Porth. Just one of the questions that they asked, well, why could that be? And you do see here there are more older homes in poor neighborhoods in Los Angeles. Folks, just as an example, if you drive through South Los Angeles, which is in general one of our poor areas, it's filled with these beautiful old craftsman and Victorian homes. Whereas in the wealthier neighborhoods, there tend to be fewer older buildings and more newer homes. Nothing conclusive here, but again, just an example to show how a user can begin to dig deeper with this information. Another example of what can be done here is all of the neighborhoods that are shown have high Cal EnviroScreen scores. Those in light blue have over 50% owner occupancy. Those in dark blue are over 50% renter occupancy. And you're able to compare residential, total residential, and then single family and multifamily energy intensity per square foot to get a sense of how things differ. And if the county was thinking about, for example, creating an energy efficiency program, it gives information about where to target things and how things you might want to consider things differently. So I'm just about at the end of my time, and I want to circle back here to just say again that this really is an example of collaboration, which I know is at the heart of what ARCCA does. We at the university have some skill sets in technology and access to research and wonderful data security resources and things like this. The county actually implements programs and is responsible for responding to state legislation. LARC directly serves local governments, and all of the stakeholders in our group are, they're the ones that actually need to implement these programs. And so it was really through collaboration that everybody bringing what they have to the table that we were able to create this tool. It started that way right from the outset as we were developing the scope of the project. And I'll say that continues now as we release this project. It continues to be a collaboration, and we really are inviting all of you on the call to now be our collaborators, to join with us, to use the tool and send us your feedback. Let us know what you want to see next. Let us know how you used it. Let us know how it can be improved. Again, it truly is a community resource. And with that, I'm going to open it up to questions.
And as a reminder, if you have any questions, there is a questions tab of your control panel, and if you type that in, I can go ahead and shoot those over to Zoe. So I'll just wait a little bit to see if anyone has any questions as of now. We have a quick question from Ben Miller. Would you be able to provide some examples of policy decisions this might influence?
Sorry, Julia, I think I just cut out the last part of the question. Did you say examples of policy decisions that the tool could support?
That this tool might influence.
Sure. I can give an example actually right off the bat we worked early on with the city of Los Angeles as they were working on setting an energy disclosure policy. And they came to us saying we want to know where we should set our threshold. Policies have been set in other large regions, like 50,000 square feet and above, such as what just came out with 802, and they wanted to know how much energy of the city's energy they could expect to capture with such a threshold. And we had strong inclinations that what we were going to find would be different than other regions, but even we and the city were surprised at precisely how different. We found that really, even going down to a threshold in the city of Los Angeles of 30,000 square feet, you weren't able to capture 50% of the city's energy. I'm forgetting the exact statistic. I think it was just around 30%. Might have even been less there. You had to actually go all the way down to buildings of 10,000 square feet and above to get to that 50,000 square foot threshold. So that provided some really strong information for the city on how much energy they could anticipate collecting, and also we were able to say how many parcels that meant, so how many owners you would be working with, or estimate of how many owners you'd be working with, which helps to give information on like the expense of implementing a policy. So that's one example, and I think Ron will talk about others as well. But climate action planning is another key one, in greenhouse gas accounting. So that a huge expense of any city doing a community greenhouse gas inventory is the building energy consumption. It's very time consuming to gather. Because of the privacy concerns, the exactness and the type of data that cities get from one year to the other, it's not always clear what the method for providing that data was. And so the Energy Atlas actually provides that data at the city level and then broken down into really meaningful characteristics, providing a huge amount of the work needed to create a community greenhouse gas inventory. And as somebody who used to help jurisdictions do that, I think that it's incredibly valuable, so we can actually move on to implementing and reducing emissions rather than simply counting them.
Fantastic. And we have quite a few additional questions. Will the data be updated year after year into the future?
Yes, so we are going to be expanding, so you can see that we're at 2010. Part of that was it took quite a while to get the first round of data, and so by the time we got it and were able to implement it, it was now 2015. But we anticipate having 2010 through 2015 completed hopefully in the next 12 months, and then updating it on a regular basis. I think that's to be determined if it will be annual or biannual.
Fantastic. Another question, can you describe the relation between buildings and parcels, and how often do you see a one-to-one relation?
Great question, and I would definitely be happy to. So parcels are found in the county assessor's database, and they have to, it's like a parcel of land, and they're determined by ownership. They're used by the county to assess taxes. What I can tell you is that the mass majority of parcels in LA County have one building on them. I unfortunately don't have the statistic right in front of me, and I'd have to kind of go through my files to find the exact number of where there's one building on a parcel. But I will say, so there can be multiple buildings on a parcel. I could give an example, like UCLA's campus is one parcel, but obviously has many buildings on it. There are also instances where you can have multiple parcels in one building, such as condominiums, where you could have parcels stacked upon each other. In Los Angeles, that's actually quite a small number of parcels. And in all of those instances, what we do is we aggregate the energy consumption and the building characteristics and provide that as a parcel view. So if we had multiple, if there were 3 buildings, let's say, on one parcel, we simply sum the energy consumption and we sum the square footage. In, again, the mass majority of those buildings have the same use type. But if there was commercial buildings and residential buildings, then that is categorized in our database as a mixed use. And the reason that we use parcels instead of buildings, right, because buildings is what we think of in terms of energy consumption, really has to get to the technological capacity at this point, in that geocoding to the parcel level is actually quite precise. I think we have 90% of all service addresses in LA County to the parcel level. It's actually quite unheard of to get that scope and breadth to the parcel level. Other folks that we spoke with who had been working on this, we weren't able to personally, can't say that this is fully the case, but talk to anybody who'd gone beyond 50%, and usually it was much lower. And we also have a 98% accuracy, largely due to the fact that we have LA County has a fabulous GIS department that we coordinated with very closely under the direction of Mark Brenninger. And we also have access to wonderful students who are actually able to go in and hand check thousands of records to confirm that we were doing things accurately. So I know that was more information than you asked about buildings or parcels, but all of those things are really related. We definitely look forward, we're working with a big movement in the state that folks may be aware of to map meters to buildings, and we are part of that statewide discussion. We look forward to sharing what we found working through this process for a couple of years and working with the service address level data so that we can even improve upon that level of precision.
Great. Thank you, Zoe. Another question. Can you build this type of aggregated database in other regions without having the parcel level information?
We can definitely build the information in other regions, and we're actually working with some other counties to expand this, and we currently have plans underway for the rest of Southern California. Without the parcel level information, we would need some sort of other data set that provided information about the building type and the building size in that geography. So if some other resource was available that wasn't that parcel assessor's database, then yes, we could, but without that information, I think you would lose a lot of the meaning and the power of the tool.
Great. And you mentioned that you'll be adding on some other Southern California counties and expanding. Could you tell us a little more about that and what your plans are for expansion?
Yes, so we are working with the Southern California Regional Energy Network to expand to the rest of the Southern California Regional Energy Network territory. And we're in discussions and open to other collaborations with other regions that are interested.
Great, and that's a perfect segue into another question that we have. What would it take to expand the Atlas to other California metropolitan regions, such as the Bay Area, and what might the cost associated be?
Yeah, great questions. So I think that what it takes is the data available. We haven't worked in the PG&E territory, which is in the Bay Area yet. But that would be one significant barrier to overcome. And then the other piece would be, I think, a group of dedicated collaborators, because the methods and the technology that we've created are really easily scalable. We really set it up that way so that this would be something that didn't have to be paid for over and over again, but could be replicated and used by multiple jurisdictions in the public interest. However, that knowledge on the ground and making sure that we're talking with folks and working with engaged groups that are going to get the tool out there and can provide us with information about the landscape that improves our accuracy is really important. And then in terms of dollars, I think that It's a little bit hard, so I'll say the two pieces that are important there are the number of geographies that are involved at any one time. So because we're crunching a lot of numbers at once and the computer more or less does that, the size of how much we're putting in doesn't have a direct relationship with cost. And I think straight replication, our estimates has been around between $200,000 and $250,000 to do a first-time replication of the database and the website, which is about 50% of the cost for the first time around. And we'll say having more partners on the ground so that you could do larger areas can cut down on that cost for particular regions.
Great. Looks like we have one more question. Could you please describe at what levels the data is disaggregated for public users? For example, spatial scale, sectoral breakdowns, and building types?
Yes, I think that I understand the question. If I don't answer it completely, then please give me a follow-up. So what is shown on the website, we go down to the neighborhood level. That's the most disaggregated that we get. I think there's 277 neighborhoods that we show information for in LA County. We also then group that up into cities and into COGs. The reason that we chose those levels was that they're the levels of decision making. We didn't go below the level of the neighborhood to disaggregate, although we could have, because we found that we ran into too many privacy issues. So while we could show information for many neighborhoods, we couldn't show information that we felt was consistent enough across the region. And then also, honestly, to make the website responsive enough. The neighborhood level, there's so much data that's already there. We wanted to make sure that the tool functioned well.
Fantastic. And one last question. Have you thought about using CoStar Data to grow the data in your database?
Yes. So I have a feeling I might know who that question is from. So yes, so we've been working with, I think in this next round of data, I'm not intimately familiar with CoStar Data, but it has been a discussion in our stakeholder group. And actually one of the things we'll be working on in the coming month or so actually is thinking about data sets that we could use to improve the next iteration, and CoStar is on the table to think about.
Fantastic. I'm going to go ahead and hold other questions until the next round of questions, which we will have after we hear from Ron. Thank you, Zoe.
Are we going to move on to the next slide? Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining the call. I'm Ronald Moore with the County of Los Angeles. Many people know my boss, Howard Choi. I'm one of the minions who stays in the background. Anyway, there was a question earlier about, or in general, about why did the County of Los Angeles join this? As one of the parties on the Southern California REN energy network type of activities, we just wanted to be a leader, and we're going to need data for what we want to do going in the future. If we're going to offer programs to the public and try to get people to work collaboratively and all, you need data. You need to know where energy is being used, who's using it, how it's being used, what it costs, all those good kind of metrics. And so when UCLA kind of approached us and all, we were willing and able then to support them. Their costs, because somebody asked how much did it cost, we funded them with $500,000 for 2 years worth of work. $500,000 for what we got was a hell of a deal. I've worked with many vendors over the last 15 years, and I just tell you the truth, a lot of times I'm not too happy with the way the relationship goes, and I'm not necessarily too happy with what we got. They did a hell of a job. They were also very responsive to things that we talked about, though, what we wanted, the way we wanted things to look, and how things were going to be presented. They brought a lot of ideas forward and presented them to us and said, what do you think? Some things we said, hey, it's good, and some things we said, hey, it's bad. We need to try a different approach. And they were really, really good from the top all the way down. They had a hell of a workforce. Dr. Princell and the people at the top are very, very willing to work and very, very intelligent and want to get something done. And then all the students and everybody they just had a hell of a workforce, really impressive people. So they pulled information from all the different types of areas and they put it together. The social economic type of work that they did as far as making things for income and neighborhoods and age of buildings and all that, it was a hell of an effort. And that can now be replicated into the other areas besides just energy, but transportation and the Cal environmental areas and so many areas. They've got a database now to work with that you can put different metrics against, and it'll make future efforts much, much easier to get to. And the fact that it resides within a research institution instead of a private entity in some ways makes it much easier to work with them also from a contracting method for government agencies. So the ease of working with them was wonderful. They were really good. They were really talented. So from the county's viewpoint, it was a really nice time working with them. And I hardly say that about anybody. I'm not necessarily a positive person on things. Can we go ahead and move on to our next slide? Okay. Many of the governments locally, everybody's working on putting together greenhouse gas inventories and a climate reduction plan and all. The efforts out there are really broad. Everybody in the world's got one going on. So we're doing it too. We want to do one big overall for the County of Los Angeles and big high level view, but many people are putting together at the city level. So it puts all the information in people's hands because it was really hard for them to get the data and how to work on it. Somebody asked about, hey, has there been direct policy things that have come about from this tool? And there's been a handful of them. But on this one in particular, everybody in the world has just come up and said, hey, we're using the data for our greenhouse gas accounting and putting together our climate action plan. So that we're kind of positive on. It's nice to hear. We don't necessarily track that. If people are using it, we're happy. We don't necessarily need to know that they're using it. We're just happy that they are. As far as the programs that we have going into the future, whether it's a residential program or if we're offering programs to the government, all the same thing. We're hoping that the ability to look at the data and to drive the programs. What are we offering? Where are we offering it? Who are we offering it to? And then the ability to measure it in the future. So if we're putting a lot of money into a certain area and we're funding a certain activity, we should be able to geographically track it and see if we're actually having an effect. So it only takes a couple of literally mouse clicks. And some of the things that the mouse clicks won't do, but you can actually ask UCLA to do is you can just tell them, hey, listen, I want to see like the 3 highest zip codes that are next to each other that are the highest energy users in the county. And they can do the reports fairly fast and fairly easy. So having the data there, it makes it nice to be able to do that. Right now we've got through 2010, so we need to bring this stuff up current so we can track our progress over time, see what direction we're going, start bringing in GDP and stuff like that, and see where the energy follows the economic data. So what we're going to do in the future. It'll help us on where we're going after grants and proposal requirements and all that, trying to get our funding and the ability to track all that kind of deal. We mentioned the fact that there's municipalities within the county and hopefully outside the county that want to put together the energy disclosure ordinances for their building stock within their area. These kind of tools will help drive that kind of deal. On the grid planning, I've never been really one who ever really paid attention to social justice or anything like that. But once you start looking at the data, it really starts to hit you on the way energy is used. And then if we also then kind of start bringing in the grid type of information on where the infrastructure sits, and we can see where the things are being used and where the power is coming from and where it's being used, it really starts to affect you after a while. Once you start looking at the energy use and what people pay as a percentage of income, all of a sudden, all the low-income stuff that maybe a lot of people aren't in favorable of, you start to realize the need for some of this stuff. Some of the rate designs that are in effect, you start to your attitudes will start to change. I was never really one on soak the rich or anything like that in my life. I was kind of always free market. But some of the energy usage on a per capita basis, the curve is so steep towards the upper incomes that I'll just be truthful with you. If I get in trouble for saying it, I'll get in trouble. Maybe having them pay high rates isn't such a bad idea. So the usage on energy is really skewed economically, and maybe bringing some social justice into the rates isn't such a bad idea. So next slide. I don't know if this is myself or somebody else on this next one, but I'll talk about it anyway. Oh, we don't have a next slide. Anyway, we just wanted to mention the fact that working with the university was great. This is kind of a personal one for me. I know there's a lot of people on the phone from up in Northern California. I was just happy we were able to do something in Southern California and that we didn't have to rely on a national energy lab to get something done. I was kind of proud of that. I was kind of proud of the fact that the County of Los Angeles was able to implement something and be part of something on a big regional basis. It's kind of where we want to go. And we're hoping that other local governments, the NGOs, any kind of stakeholder that wants to use the tools is able to use it. And we're hoping that people will come in and have ideas on how to contribute or how people want it to grow. So that's it for my 2 slides. I'm available for questions.
Great, thanks so much, Ron. And we are going to have another round of questions, or Q&A. So folks who have questions for Ron or additional questions for Zoe, please go ahead and submit those through the control panel. And looks like we have a couple follow-up questions for Zoe. Can we pull small to medium-sized businesses in a geographic region to determine opportunities for greenhouse gas emissions reduction and working with that sector? And something related is if we're able to include energy costs. If the tool is not able to do these things, are there plans to update the tool?
Great question. So, yep, actually, energy costs is something that we are planning to incorporate the next round. Exactly what that looks like and how we incorporate it is we're still figuring that out. But yes, it's obviously fundamental, so we are planning to incorporate it. And pulling out small businesses versus large businesses. So also, one of the areas that we're looking to improve is to go more into the industrial classifications or specific information about the buildings, because commercial and industrial consumption varies so much depending on what's going on with the business. So we have all of that data in the background database. We have this 6-digit NICS code information. And it is also one of the areas for improvement. So it's, again, available in the background database to run analysis on, and we are thinking through ways to incorporate it into the next iteration.
Great, and a couple suggestions would be if you were able to include energy costs or for your plans moving forward, it would be instructive to have energy costs and costs as a percentage of income per square feet, etc. Great. Any other questions for either of our panelists or even Krista as well, who would be able to answer any questions around LARC or ARCCA? I'll give you just a couple minutes. All right, well, I'm not seeing anything, so if you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to shoot those over to me, and I can make sure the right person gets it, and we can post any follow-up questions online on ARCCA's website. So I just want to thank everyone on behalf of ARCCA and all of our panelists today for joining us. I heard of the LA Energy Atlas first. I think it was back in July when they had the pre-launch, and it was really fascinating seeing this extremely interactive tool. I mean, even just taking screenshots of the different maps and different ways you can view the data and including that in your reports is, one, a huge time saver and a great way to represent the data and showcase it in a different way. And I also wanted to invite everyone to join us for our next learning session. This is going to be, I actually do apologize, it's going to be on December 2nd. I'm updating that now. And there we go. We're going to be featuring business resiliency and building business resiliency. We'll have Meg Arnold from Value Vision talking about the Capital Region Business Resiliency Initiative that's focused on small businesses. We'll also have Katie Maher from the Center for Climate and Energy Solutions diving into the Weathering the Storm report. And we'll also have Christopher Benjamin from PG&E kind of talking over PG&E's own business resiliency strategy and what that looks like. It's going to be on December 2nd from 12 to 1, so feel free to grab your lunches and join us for our next learning session. If you're interested in learning more about ARCCA, please do visit us online at arccacalifornia.org, or feel free to reach out to me, either via email or by phone. I'll go ahead and send this all out in a follow-up email. It'll also include the link to the recorded webinar, as well as the presentations will be included as well. So thanks again, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.